Much love and infinite mojo to you if you're listening to this, and even if you aren't. Lately, I've had a lot to think about, and while it exposes me to vulnerabilities, I felt I needed to get this off my chest in some fashion. I don't have many privileges to check, but two I do have is the ability to make pretty pictures and do rudimentary video editing. And I've had some strange experiences I felt I needed to speak on using this outlet, in the very least because there may be others having similar experiences who aren't able to approach it in this way or in this medium. I hear voices, and I have monsters. The voices are not the monsters. I'd always been a fan of Grant Morrison and Alan Moore, more so for their persona than their work. Just as well, the same for writers like Robert Anton Wilson and Philip K. Dick. They all described a similar experience that, in one point in their life or another, they felt as though they were in contact with something beyond them, whether it be Morrison's aliens from Alpha Centauri or Philip K. Dick's spiritual experiences or Wilson's Puka. They claimed they had an experience where they felt as though they were being contacted by some strange force from some other space, dimension, or time. For a decade, that was the experience I desired, or at least the one I thought I desired. As I speak, I have just today been released from a mental ward in a local hospital. I'd had another breakdown, another lapse of psychosis. So I'm aware that I'm an unreliable narrator, and I want to make sure the audience knows this as well. I was diagnosed as bipolar 2 and PTSD when I was about 30. I tend to have had experiences to some extreme or another that, while harmful to myself and more unfortunately others, I couldn't simply dismiss as mental illness. In January of 2017, at about 3 a.m., the voice came back. Just this time I hadn't dismissed it or forgotten it. It had been showing up to soothe me during my colonic jerks I had experienced connected to some trauma I experienced as a child and my toxic relationship with that abuser at the present time. At that point it was like static on a television, but showing up in the form of Stephen Fry, knowing that this would be a person I respected and would trust given the situation. He too is diagnosed as bipolar and has a fascinating documentary on the subject called The Secret Life of the Manic Depressive. I'll leave a link to it in the comments. But in January, the voice rang through loud and clear, and suddenly I was in a pure white room with no curves or corners, just blank space myself, and the Godhead supposedly speaking to me in the form of the lovely Mr. Fry. He was as charming and affable as he always is, but was explaining to me that he had been trying to contact me for my entire life. And then I remembered. I remembered all the times I forgot or repressed the voice. It had come through loud and clear at the witching hour to explain to me that it had been the hand on my shoulder my whole life, and and I had forgotten. He was there when I was 7, when afraid of heights. He would tell me to jump from the high branches of the trees I would climb. I would think, "That's not me, I didn't say that," to which it would counter, "My name is William Dean Blankenship Jr., and I'm going to jump from this tree in 10, 9, 8, 7," and I would inevitably jump. It was there in the time when times were rough, always encouraging me in the kindest and most direct ways, letting me know I had something special, some purpose, some reason for all this suffering. When my wife and I separated and inevitably divorced, it was as important in my ability to pick myself back up off the ground as my dog or my craft at art were. My reasons, my purpose, the thing that I had that was special. However, all my life I felt disassociated from reality. It feels 3 feet away at all times, my mind keeping the real world, the cruel one, at arm's length. But that January, the last time the voice showed up, I felt as though I were experiencing that and the real life simultaneously. I began to cry. What about the girl I was seeing? How could I tell her this without her thinking I had gone balls to the walls level crazy? I'm leaving her name out of this for her sake, but it reassured me. She won't judge you. She loves you, Bill. I cried more. Emotionally exhausted, I looked at the clock and it was 3:33 a.m. I decided it would be best to lie down for a bit, and that's when it started getting really weird. While trying to reel in from a voice I'd been simultaneously seeking and repressing, I was immediately sucked out of my body and flung far into the space as the neighborhood, the state, the continent, and the earth and shrank and faded below, if anything in space that vast is below. I was sucked out into a spacecraft I found familiar. As a kid, I had insomnia and would imagine myself flying through tunnels out into a spaceship in deep space with my great big technotic space room. This was the safe place in my mind. That's how I got to sleep as a child who would see judging eyes staring back at him every night on the back of his eyelids. Only this time I was experiencing it, what I can only describe as a crystalline fifth dimensional plane. Bits of time occurring at different times held together only by loose chaotic connections of variables as if time were facets on a crystal. As a joke, they first showed up as some strange monster aliens in a Sam Keith vein of design, but immediately donned human form, adding that they were just joking around. Both wore white shirts, black slacks, black ties. Both had moderately length brown hair. They invited me in and started explaining things. The ship was more complex than when I was a kid, and they explained that they had made some upgrades. I felt anxious, and they said, "Don't be. That anxiety you're feeling, that's the same energy as the energy at the center of the sun. There was no difference." They said that out here in deep space, it's just like a consciousness soup. It was consciousness without form. It didn't need form out here, and the theatrics were all just for my benefit, so I could experience it better than I would be able to without form. They talked about the holographic nature of the universe and how it was kind of like a video game, and at the quantum level was like being able to see the pixels. It's where the things glitch. All of this was occurring right before I was running a Kickstarter for the Thunder Chickens. I thought it all meant something and that things were finally coming together, but I was still struggling with acute bouts of manic psychosis. After the Kickstarter was over, I ended up kicked out onto the streets, bouncing between mental wards, tents in the woods, homeless shelters, and what seemed like destitution. I lost the girl of my dreams. I lost the respect of my peers. I lost friends. I lost family. Hell, I'm not even allowed to be in my hometown anymore or I'll be arrested. That's not hyperbole, that's what I was told. I don't know what to do with this. Some inner searching as of late has clarified to me what a monster I've been in my own life. And that's the thing, the monstrous voice is always my own. In my head, that is. The one that reminds me of every fuck up, every misstep, every mistake. And this is just my experience. I'm sure others are tormented by their voices. In fact, I know there are. I've done a lot of research on the topic. The only thing I could think to do is just tell the damn story. And of course, it's not the full story, as I want to be able to keep it concise. I know I'm tired of feeling like a monster. I've never been an advocate for medication, but I've gotten to a point where I'm trying lithium, one of those drugs with the stigma attached. It's still early in the process, but I'm feeling the emotions are letterboxing, as Richard Dreyfuss put it in Stephen Fry's documentary. And I'm hoping that maybe reaches someone who needs it. You can come back from the edge. I'm no longer homeless. I work a full-time job, but I need to approach the real shadow. That if I'm going to get anywhere in this world, I can't be living in these extremes. And I want to get somewhere. I mean, doesn't everybody? If you got this far, thank you for listening. Um, Maybe try to do some more of these videos on a more consistent basis and talk about some of the things that run through my head. Feel free to comment if you got anything out of this and share it with anybody you think might be able to get something out of it. Anyway, much love, Infinite Mojo.